Today is Council Thursday for the Niagara region, which means I've got another Council update for you. Now, there are a number of things on this agenda, but what I really want to dive into and explore tonight is the update to the Procedural Bylaw. Now, stick with me. I know it sounds dry, and well, you'd be right, but it's actually really important too. Now, the reason why, the Procedural Bylaw, it's what dictates how you as a resident can speak before Council on matters that are important to you. It tells you how long you can speak, when you have to register to speak, all those kind of things. Now, this is a critical part of our democracy, to have the people engage directly with the elected representatives in a formal way. And I fear that some of the proposed changes tonight are hindering people's ability to do that. And anything that makes it harder for people to speak and to dialogue with their elected officials, well, it's concerning to me. Before I get into the changes, I want to describe what it's currently like if you want to speak before Regional Council. So if you want to speak at Regional Council, you have to submit the Friday before the meeting at 9 a.m. your request to speak. It's totally reasonable. The clerks have to get the agenda ready. They have to prepare. I get it. Makes sense. But the problem is the Friday before the meeting at 9 a.m. is also when they usually publish the agenda. So how are people supposed to know what they want to speak on if the agenda hasn't been published? By the time they know what's on the agenda, the deadline to speak has already passed. It sounds like a pretty contradictory catch-22 that's designed to keep people from speaking at Council. So one of the problems with the current procedural bylaw is that no section talks about when the agenda for Council is to be published to the public. Now, one of the sections, 11.5, talks about that the agenda has to be sent to every member of Council 72 hours before the meeting. But again, nowhere in the procedural bylaw does it talk about when the agenda has to be published to the public. So now at this point, I want to tell you about how the City of St. Catharines, when I was on Council last term, actually solved this exact issue. I want to give a shout out to the City Clerk, Bonnie Nastico-Dunk, and the whole Clerk's Department for tackling this issue. It was a pretty simple fix, actually. What we decided to do was have the agenda had to be published. We put it in our procedural bylaw 10 days before a meeting, and if you wanted to register to speak, you had to register 5 days before. So that means you got 5 days to kind of look at, play, and decide if you wanted to speak at a City Council meeting. Simple fix. That is why I was excited when I saw that Niagara Regional Council was looking at updating their procedural bylaw. Maybe they could do the same thing or something similar and fix it. Now, I want to give some kudos. They did push back the deadline to register from the Friday before the meeting to the Tuesday before the meeting. So that's a good change. That's a step in the right direction. But they still never updated when the agenda has to be published. Technically, based on their procedural bylaw right now, it never has to be published to the public. It has to be sent only to councillors 72 hours before the meeting. Now, whether this is an oversight, which is entirely possible, or if it's I don't know, a concerted plan to keep people off the agenda, I don't know. But it's making it harder to speak, and I hope that Council changes that tonight. It would be a nice, simple fix. Now, apart from the agenda publication issue, the other part that was kind of disconcerting to me about the updates tonight to the procedural bylaw is they want to add 2 completely new sections about how they can stop people from speaking at Council. And I'm going to read this to you because it says it right here. They want to add 13.13. A request to appear before Council or committee shall not be permitted regarding any of the following. And they've got a whole list. They've got A to D. They've got a whole alphabet of reasons why you can't. And I want to dig into some of these. One of them, C, says appeals by vendors or service providers who were not the successful proponents for awards of contract by the region. And now, some of you are like, what does that even mean? Others are like, why does this affect me? And it might not. But why this is important is for those of you who remember the whole Burgoyne Bridge scandal a number of years ago, Tom Rankin, one of the most respected developers in St. Catharines and Niagara, was a not successful proponent for the award of contract for the Burgoyne Bridge, and he made a delegation to the region and kind of exposed the problems that were going on with the procurement, with the tender, with all that kind of stuff. And that's how we started to realize the problems with Burgoyne Bridge. Based on this new update, Tom Rankin would not have been allowed to speak about this issue, and we might not have known about the problems around Burgoyne Bridge until much, much later. Now, another reason why people can't speak, it says, the CAO, clerk, and legal counsel determine, acting reasonably, that a person requesting to be a delegate at a meeting is likely to engage in unreasonable or offensive conduct. Now, first off, who defines unreasonable or offensive conduct? What's unreasonable to one person might be very reasonable to somebody else. So that seems like a really broad and slippery slope to be able to shut people down. And even worse, it says likely to engage in unreasonable conduct. So the person hasn't even done anything yet, and if the CAO or the clerk thinks that they might, they can be declined to speak. That's not right. And then going on to another section, 13.14, it says the clerk may refuse to add a delegation to the agenda when, in the opinion of the clerk, in consultation with the regional chair and CAO, and then it lists some matters. Again, I think it is, it's dangerous to give anyone, even the regional chair, the ability to stop people from speaking based on their opinion. And that's not what I'm saying. That's what the procedural bylaw that they want to update to is saying. It says the opinion of the clerk. So anyway, I hope that regional council takes this opportunity of updating their procedural bylaw to not disrespect democracy, but to actually improve it, to not make it harder for people to speak, but actually to make it easier. It is within their power to do that. So City Hall and regional headquarters were paid for by taxpayer dollars. It's your building, and nobody should be trying to keep you out from speaking your voice in those buildings. So that's my update for tonight. I'm going to be watching. The link to the live stream and the agenda are down below as always, and let's see what happens. Have a good night.